Hello.
Hi,
Hi,
Stav.
Mona.
So where in Israel are you?
I'm in a very rural place in Israel, out in the countryside. It's called Kfar Oria, and I've never been here before, but I found it now to escape New York. That was like a place with no people, out in nature, for isolation. Sounds perfect.
I don't know why it didn't kind of hit me, but where you are right now is possibly like a 4-hour drive from where my family lives in southern Lebanon.
Yeah, I
Just
think
funny.
when the borders were open before 1948, there was a train that used to go there. And you can still drive even less than 4 hours. I think it's like 3 hours to the border with Lebanon, and you stand there and you can look beyond the fence and you see the villages. And
Yeah.
maybe I can stand there and wave to your family.
I mean, it's funny because what you just mentioned, right? It made me think like, so our group through the LARC is Middle Eastern American writers. And I know that for me, I just identify as Middle Eastern American, Arab American sometimes, Lebanese American, whatever. But how do you identify yourself as someone who, like, how long have you lived in the States and how do you identify yourself?
I first moved to the States in 2011. So I'm an immigrant in the States. I don't feel at home there at all. So, but I do keep asking myself how to identify myself. I'm definitely Israeli. I grew up in Israel. Hebrew is my first language. I only learned English in an older age, like in school and then in high school. And I actually only really learned English when I arrived in the US. I realized how much I can't speak English. And
I think you do
and
pretty
then
well, but anyway.
it's been a while. I'm working on it, but it's still a second language, and it's not just the language; it's also the social behavior that comes like with the language, with everything it means. I need, like, as an immigrant, you need to learn that, and I feel very Middle Eastern, and I see that since I moved to New York, I see that the people I connect with the most are people from the Middle East, because we have, and we see it in our group, I think. I feel it very strongly with our group, that we have so much in common. Something in the culture. We're always late, right? Every meeting we have never starts on time. No one shows up on time, don't even try. And we all talk into each other's things. And
Yeah.
something in this, like, and it's a very family-oriented culture.
Yeah.
We all care about our families, write about our families. It's so central.
No, it's interesting because because I'm very aware that I'm half. I'm like I grew up in Southern California. My mother was a white woman from Seattle, Washington. And as I've probably said to you, and I've often said, just during the Civil War, then all my cousins came to live with us. So our house was very much, it was sort of like in the Middle East, but also in Southern California. And, we would go to the beach and I would be embarrassed at them
Why?
speaking Arabic. I was like ashamed of it. I just wanted us to be like, whatever. Uh,
Americans.
all the white people. Yeah, I mean, I was very palpably aware that we were not American. And of course, now I've embraced that. So, but it is different even being like half Arab, half American. I grew up here in the States, you grew up there. But it is amazing how we do have those things in common. I mean, I think another thing I think connects us is we all have a bit of, shall I say, cynicism about government and corruption. I knew sort of from a young age, because I sort of heard so much about how my dad's country had failed and things were a mess. And so in some weird way, I'm very curious if you feel like growing up in Israel, growing up with a certain amount of, I don't want to describe it, speak for you, but shall we say, there were emergency situations. The play that you sent is about a small group of people trying to put on a play in the midst of the Israel and Gaza conflict, war. And
Yeah, the
so
2014 war. It's like very recent. And
the thing that I found, I have two questions. One is, in your play, one of the things, this is more of a comment, one of the things I found sort of funny and sad all at once was the way that after a while, the red alert sound that you indicate in the script, they all kind of either go about their business, they start to judge the red alert sounds, they start to get apps telling them where the bombs are going to fall. So that was very interesting to me. I'd love to hear what you say about that. And also, I wonder if you think, this sounds crazy, but do you think in some ways, you as an Israeli, given the sort of chaos at times of your childhood, are somewhat weirdly equipped for this moment? Is Corona another in a series? Or do you feel like everyone's freaked out in a whole different way?
Such an interesting question, because it's living in the US since 2011, I think has changed me somewhat. So with this current crisis, I feel like my anxiety levels were very high. Especially being in New York, I think there's a good reason to experience all this anxiety. But then I arrived in Israel, and everyone is so chill. Like they go about their business, and like the police was kind of forcing a quarantine for everyone because people were just leaving. And I keep having these arguments with my mom who wants to go and demonstrate against the government, because there are so many reasons to demonstrate against the government, but she also wants to go and stand with 2,000 people in the square in Tel Aviv. And I'm like, you can't do that. You can't do it right now. And she's like, the virus is not so important, we'll be fine. So I think that people here are kind of accustomed to emergencies. And yeah, they take it. And I think that's a big problem actually in this country, because if people weren't so accustomed to that, maybe they would care more about the real ongoing emergency, which is our relationship with the Palestinians and the occupation. Like I grew up in the 90s. I was in elementary school, and there were all these bombing happening, and that was just our reality. And there were wars. We weren't very aware of what's happening on the other side. We were aware of our reality, but that's how I grew up. And you just get used to it at some point. When someone you know gets killed, it's different. It's very different, because then it touches you. But then still life goes on. You go, like, I think for me, it's really important. And I think I keep writing about it. I think people just want to live. And they want to live peaceful and quiet life. And when you happen to be born in a country that has an ongoing war, so you have a few options, but I think most people try and choose the peaceful life, like ignore the war, do what you can to make your life better. In the US, how are people feeling? Do you think it's very different?
It's hard for me to say, because I came so I was in the middle of rehearsals. We were at our third technical rehearsal, and the day before that, I think the NBA closed down its whole season, and it got to the point in tech rehearsals, which are tedious anyway, and there's a lot of breaks where you could see everybody on their phones freaking out. We were going to take I think 2 weeks, nobody come around except my show. We were going to do what's called paper tech, which was without actors. And I have to say, at that moment, I would have given anything for that to have been true. I was like the director in your play who, when I think there's a bomb that goes through the ceiling, she says, wait, we're still going to do this. Yes. Because, at that point, I just was like, this is the trilogy. This has been 10 years that I've been working on this, with the public. We got to do this. And I obviously did not know enough. I didn't know anything at that point about the virus and all that. So we were set to come back, just the crew. And I said, hey, I'll do it. I'll be one of the stand-ins for the actors. And of course, within like 2 days, they said, we're not doing that at all. As I was in New York, I started to really get that sense of how the city felt. And, I met you in New York, and we have there are places that are homes for us, the Public Theater, the Lark, New Dramatists. And those are brick and mortar places. So I think the question for a lot of us is now, what does that mean if things continue this way, or they sort of will people say, hey, listen, I'm going to live 2 hours away. I'll come when I need to. But I want to say one thing about the adaptability thing in the Middle East, because it's interesting to hear you talk about it, because I'm always aware that, by the way, I grew up in the States. I'm not like, I am Middle Eastern, but I didn't grow up there. And there are ways in which
you're very Middle Eastern, by the way.
there are definitely ways that I know I idealize Beirut, all these things. But there are so many stories about, say, Beirut. I met an actress who was a young woman during the Civil War. And she told a story about, had gone to a nightclub, as one does, and then got into a cab, and it turned out she's being kidnapped with her friend. And it went on for a few hours. This is all pre-cell phone, of course. And the guy kidnapping her realized she was not from the right, sect, because it was a very sectarian war. And then he let her go. And so I was like, I said, oh my God, what? So how did it affect you? What did you do the next day? And she's like, well, I went back to the same nightclub. Right? I mean,
that's what you do, right?
Right. That is, I think that's an area where the Israeli and sort of Lebanese situation, you could say, is similar. People coming over without giving any notice, right? Just they knock, they knock and they come in.
I love that, actually.
I love that
in the US so much.
I love that. Yeah. So it's so hard because now we can't go to those restaurants at night. We can't go to the bar and complain about the government or inaction or corruption. This is how we have to do it. And it's very sanitized. I mean, it's lovely to see you, but
No, it's not the same. I want to see you in a restaurant or in our group at the Lark or in person. It's very strange for me. And I feel that that's the most important moment of this crisis. I hope that that's what it brings, that it brings out the importance of human connections. Because that's what I feel I miss the most. I just want to be with my family and hug them and see my friends and hang out. I miss that. Just chat. I even noticed that for the short times that I do meet them now, I get very tired very, very, very quickly because I'm not used to it. And I'm like, what's happening? It feels wrong. This whole situation feels wrong. So I hope that on the other side of it, we learn to make more time for our loved ones. Because for me personally, I feel that life in New York is running, running, running. I hardly see any friends. We only have meetings.
But I do have that feeling when I come back to the States where suddenly someone's like, listen, can we meet from 10:45 to 11:10? And you're like, sure. And let's get to it. And I agree with you. I hope that comes out of this. I hope that renewed sense of the sort of miracle that it can just be of seeing a person, being with them in the same space. A lot of playwrights I've talked to lately have just had focus problems or they're not finishing things. And so for one thing, I have mad respect for that you finished this, I think really recently, but I was like, oh, this speaks to, in a way, Corona, because in your play, it's the political situation that might keep them from doing the play. And this conflict between what's happening out there and how can we keep moving forward. Were you conscious of that as you were working on finishing this draft?
So I was concentrating on the draft, but you said that you have respect for me for managing to write in this time. And I just have to say that it was so hard to write these last 10 pages during this time. And the moment I finished writing the play, I was like, done, I'm not working anymore. So because it's so difficult. I feel that it's a time that it's impossible to concentrate and it's very hard to be creative. And I only managed to do it because I was towards the end and I had to finish. But I actually feel that now, it's true for myself, tell me how you feel, but I feel that I'm kind of pleased with not writing and I take the time to slow down. And because I have this privilege of being out in nature, so I just take long walks every day. I look at the field. I count the flowers that opened up during the
Aw.
night, and I'm like, oh, and you flower, wow, the field has changed. And I never had the opportunity to do that before, actually never. And I feel it's very strange. It's like such a scary time, but I also feel like I received some kind of a gift to just stop and be.
I think a lot of us who base ourselves in like urban settings are having that, because I'm having that, you know, where I do this one walk kind of almost every day. There's this loop I do, and it's true. I notice the weather in ways that it's like, oh, today's this, and I notice there's a little chill coming from this part of whatever. Work, I've been able to write a couple of short things, and that has been helpful. And I will say I'm very hungry now to get back to, I miss rehearsal rooms so much. It was, I don't know. I mean, I guess people have different feelings. Some people feel like theater will be forever changed. We don't know.
I love theater, and I believe in theater so much that I'm sure it will come back. Maybe it will be slightly different from what we know, but I hope it will only change for the better. Like, I hope it will bring more human stories about connections, about, I don't know, like ways to process this trauma or other traumas. But I'm sure it will come back. Theater is a communal experience. Like,
Yeah.
It's been going on for so long. I don't think
Right.
the coronavirus will take it away from us.
If theater were a person, it might be like somebody from the Middle East saying, listen, I've been through some stuff. So
Yes.
I've been through some stuff.
I've seen it all. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you about it.
I'll tell you about it.